This ship shocked the world, and this is her story. It was in 1962 that the story of the Stuart J. Court began. Plans were approved for a new massive lock at Sault Ste. Marie. This new lock would be 1,200 feet in length and 110 feet in width. This lock would replace the old Poe Lock and allow for larger vessels to pass through. By 1968, the new Poe Lock was completed and would be formally dedicated on June 26, 1969. The Philip R. Clark would be the first ship to pass through on that same day. But this new lock meant that larger vessels could be built, as the lock was 1,200 feet in length and 110 feet in width. So Lindner Industries built a new shipyard in Erie, Pennsylvania to take advantage of this new lock. They would then sign a contract with Bethlehem Steel Corporation in 1968 to construct a vessel. But not just any vessel. The first 1,000-footer on the Great Lakes. The problem with this was that most doubted if a 1,000-foot vessel could safely navigate the St. Mary's River. In fact, the Roger Blau would be built at 858 feet in length due to this concern. But the Stuart J. Court would be built at 1,000 feet anyways. Of course, due to her length, the construction of the Stuart J. Court would be quite peculiar. The bow accommodations and stern engine room would be built at Lindner Industries' Ingalls Shipbuilding Yard at Pascagoula, Mississippi, as one singular hull. Hull number 1173, or better known as the clever nickname she was given, Stubby, would only be built to a length of 182 feet and a width of 75 feet. This was because the vessel would have to pass through the locks on the St. Lawrence Seaway and Welland Canal, which could only accommodate vessels up to 730 feet in length and 75 feet in width. The cargo section or midsection had already been constructed at the Erie, Pennsylvania shipyard. On June 20th, 1970, Stubby would arrive at the Erie Yard and would be moved into the dry dock where the bow and stern sections would be separated and welded to the opposite ends of the cargo section. Then, the additional ballast tanks would be added to each section to match with the width of the cargo section at 105 feet. But at that same time the court was being built, another large vessel was being built too, the Roger Blau. The Blau wouldn't be as long as the court, as she was 858 feet in length, but was set to enter service before the Stuart J. Court. In early 1971, the court would be launched, but something would delay the ship entering service. After sea trials in the summer of 1971, the ship had issues with her bow thrusters and unloading system. But the Blau would also be delayed to entering service too. On June 24th, 1971, the Roger Blau would suffer an engine room fire, which would delay the ship's entrance to service. The Stuart J. Court would end up entering service on May 1st, 1972. Just over a month later, the Roger Blau would then enter service on June 15th, 1972. The Stuart J. Court robbed her of the title Queen of the Lakes by a month. As far as the Stuart J. Court's dimensions, they were astounding, stretching at 1,000 feet in length, 105 feet in width, and 49 feet in depth. The new Queen of the Lakes could also carry up to 58,000 tons of cargo and produce 14,400 horsepower from four General Motors 20 645 E7 diesel engines. The ship's maiden voyage would take her to Taconite Harbor, Minnesota, to load taconite pellets for Bethlehem Steel's Burns Harbor Mill. On that trip, the court would set a record load with 49,343 tons, which broke the former record by over 20,000 tons. Burns Harbor was the only port the vessel could unload at due to her shuttle boom. This shuttle boom was placed above deck at the base of the ship's aft deckhouse, although it would use a 60-foot diameter rotary elevator instead of an inclined conveyor belt used for most self-unloading systems. This self-unloading system on the Stuart J. Court was so large that it took up all of the space in the stern and forced all of the crew quarters to be placed in the bow section, where the pilot house was located. This would be the last time an American vessel was built with the pilot house at the bow on the Great Lakes, and also would be the only 1,000-foot vessel built with the pilot house at the bow. The Stuart J. Court would also be one of four ships built with a shuttle boom, the others being the Edwin H. Gott, which now has an unloading boom, the Edgar B. Speer, and Roger Blau. The Stuart J. Court would also be unique in that it featured two bow thrusters and two stern thrusters, making the vessel highly maneuverable. On top of that, the Court had hydraulic hatch covers which opened and closed automatically. All of these things made the Stuart J. Court a powerhouse iron ore carrier, as she was built specifically for carrying iron ore. The ship would set the stage for 12 vessels after her. But one feature would be a defining element of the first 1,000-footer on the Great Lakes. On the aft deckhouse, a huge number 1 would be painted, signifying the vessel's legacy as the first 1,000-foot vessel on the Great Lakes. The Court still features this today. On July 3rd, 1972, the vessel would end up hitting bottom at Johnson's Point on the St. Mary's River with her starboard propeller and would be able to continue service after an inspection. But on April 28th, 1978, the Stuart J. Court would collide with the Salty Joanna while downbound near the Sioux Locks. Luckily, both vessels would enter back into service after an inspection. In 1983, the Stuart J. Court would sit out the season at Erie, Pennsylvania, due to lack of demand. She would return to service in 1984. But it would be on July 18th, 1987, that the Stuart J. Court would do something truly incredible. The ship would load 56,251 tons of taconite pellets in only 3 hours and 35 minutes. This load typically takes anywhere from 12 to 24 hours for a ship of that size. Also, considering that the loading of a ship is a crucial process that can lead to major issues, this is very impressive. If a vessel is poorly loaded, the ship could bottom out, which would be costly and cause delays. In addition, unevenly distributed cargo can place stress on the hull, which could possibly lead to the ship cracking or, in a worst-case scenario, sinking. Considering all of this, 3 hours and 35 minutes is very impressive. The Stuart J. Court's ballast tanks, which can be controlled from the deck, were a key part in this achievement. But in 1993, the Court would suffer an unfortunate event. The vessel grounded at the Burlington Northern Ore Dock at Superior, Wisconsin on December 30th, receiving bottom damage. 2 years later, on April 24th, 1995, the ship struck a pier at the Sioux Locks. But 2001 would bring a change for the Stuart J. Court. Bethlehem Steel was struggling financially and would declare bankruptcy on October 15, 2001. The company's assets at that point were the Stuart J. Court and another 1,000-footer, the Burns Harbor. In October of 2002, the Stuart J. Court would load an incorrect load of taconite pellets at Superior, Wisconsin, requiring her to unload at Indiana Harbor. But the Court could only unload at Burns Harbor. So, the solution would be the ship loading pellets into the Sam Ladd, which then loaded the cargo onto the dock. In late 2003, both the Stuart J. Court and Burns Harbor were acquired by the International Steel Group. In late 2004, International Steel was sold to a foreign company, and the Interlake Steamship Company would receive the Stuart J. Court. But in 2009, a downturn in the steel industry would bring the Stuart J. Court into layup. But luckily, the ship would return to service again in 2010. To this day, the Stuart J. Court still operates, carrying taconite pellets from the Burlington Northern Ore Dock at Superior, Wisconsin, to Cleveland Cliffs Steel Mill at Burns Harbor, Indiana. The Court rarely deviates from this run, sometimes loading at Duluth, Minnesota, or Silver Bay, Minnesota. The vessel remains one of the most distinguishable vessels on the Great Lakes, with her unique features, legacy of the first 1,000-footer built on the Great Lakes, and the only to be built with her pilot house and accommodations in the bow section of the 1,000-foot vessels. There were doubts of whether a ship of such length could traverse the St. Mary's River, but the Court would prove these doubts wrong and lead the way for other ships of her size to be built. Following the Stuart J. Court, 12 other 1,000-footers would be built on the Great Lakes. In order of the year built, these ships are the Presque Isle, James R. Barker, Mesabi Minor, Belle River, which is now known as the Walter J. McCarthy Jr., the Lewis Wilson Foy, now known as the American Integrity, the George A. Stinson, now American Spirit, Edwin H. Gott, Indiana Harbor, Edgar B. Spear, Burns Harbor, American Century, and the Queen of the Lakes, the infamous William J. Delancey, now known as the Paul Arch Gertha. The Stuart J. Court was the beginning of the era of supercarriers on the Great Lakes. Supercarriers that would reshape the shipping industry on the Great Lakes. The Stuart J. Court certainly shocked the world. Anyway, subscribe for more shipping history videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.